the second in the series for Report Builder. And during the first session, we looked at canned queries. Today, we're going to go ahead and look at creating a custom query, but only using one file. So we're going to get to our Report Builder menu the same way we did before. We would type MN query into the speed sequence, or choose CU-based Report Builder 1 from the menu. We're going to go ahead and start with option number 1, which is to build a custom report or inquiry. And the very first thing that the system is going to ask you to do is in the drop-down box. Do you want to create a brand new query? Do you want to change an existing query? Or use the copy function to copy an existing report configuration, either by assigning it a different name or copy it to a different location? The delete button is going to delete a custom report that you no longer need, and you would get one confirmation screen if you choose that option. The next option is to display, and that's going to display the settings for an existing report, but if you choose display, you wouldn't be able to make any changes. Print report definition, if you have a report out there that you've already created and you want to see what options had been chosen for that report, you can print that definition out. And then we have run in job queue and run. We normally just choose run. The run in job queue option is going to run the report using like batch processing, which reduces the resource drain in the system. And it's recommended for running a custom report that's set up to output to a printer. However, there never does seem to be much of a drain on the system, so we use the run option. Today we're going to go ahead and choose to create. The second thing the system is asking us here is the name of our query. We can actually name the query right now, or you can leave it blank, and then at the end, if you decide you want to save this query, you can name it at that point. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. When you're naming a query, there's a maximum of 10 characters, and you can use A through Z, 0 through 9, and the $sign, the pound sign, the @ sign, or an underline. If you did want to see a list of the reports that are already on the system, you could use the Spyglass for a list of your reports. And then it's going to ask you the location where this query is going to end up at. And you would just want to go ahead and have it located in your query XX file, the XX being your credit union's 2-digit. So we're going to choose to create today, and we'll go ahead and name our query when we're all done. So we'll just press enter, and then on this next screen we get a list of all the different options that we can do when we're creating a report. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is choose the file. Where's the data going to come from for this report? And we're going to say that we're going to run this report on our master file. Okay. And then the location, that's going to be the library where the file is going to be found. And again, the file XX, in this case file TR because I'm using the training library, but those last 2 characters would be your credit union's 2-digit ID. The member and the format, you're never going to touch those because once you press enter on this screen to accept what you've put in, the system is going to make adjustments to those fields to relate to whatever file you chose or whatever location you chose. So once you choose a file and you press enter, you do have an option over on the left-hand side to add a second file if you wish. That's what we're going to be covering next week, Today we're just going to be using the one file. So the bottom of the screen tells us to select the files that we want to use or go ahead and press enter to confirm. We've already chosen our file, so we'll press enter to confirm. And then down at the bottom the system says select your options or press F3 to save or run this query. If we haven't chosen any selection criteria yet, we could still go ahead and click on the preview report option, and it's going to give us everybody that's in that master file. We haven't told it yet. We only want these particular people, so it'll give us everybody. So we've chosen the file that we want the data to come from. Next, we're going to go ahead and choose our fields. Oh, just backing up a bit here. If when you come into Report Builder, you already know that you want to choose files, choose fields, and choose records, and those are the only three things you may want to do, you could go ahead and put a 1 in each of those boxes so that the system would take you to each one of those options. But we'll just click on the option to choose it. So choose fields. What columns do you want on your report? We're going to go ahead and say that we want to list the account base. We want to list the member's first name. We want to list their last name. And the reason I'm skipping numbers here, starting with 10, 20, 30, let's say we chose our fields, and then later we came back in and decided we also wanted the Social Security number. Well, we would have some room between the 10 and the 20, basically, to choose other fields that we want to see. We're going to want their addresses on here, too. So those are on the next page. We have to scroll down. Now, if you forget what you did on the first page as far as 10, 20, 30, you could just go ahead and start at any number here, just making sure it's higher than what you had on the other page. So if I didn't remember I had used 10, 20, 30, maybe I thought I used 4 different options, I could start at 50 here if I wanted to. So we want the account base, first name, last name, and the member's address. So we choose our options and press enter. It's going to list them here in the order that we chose. And then down at the bottom it says press enter to confirm. If that's correct and that's what we want on our query, we can go ahead and press enter here. And then if you wanted to make sure you got all the correct fields, you could go back to preview report, and now we see that we've got our account number, first name, last name, and so forth. Create custom fields. We're not going to actually be creating any custom fields today, but the custom fields is like combining or performing calculations on other fields. Let's say that first we wanted to create a field that used field A plus field B equals the new field. You could create a field like that. Or maybe you're creating a vendor file, and the vendor's asking that the member's name be in one field instead of first name plus last name, two separate fields. We could create a brand new field that would say first name plus last name equals, and then whatever we want to name that new field. So then when we ran the report, those two fields would be combined as one. Then choose records. What data do you actually want to see in your report? And we've got some different comparison options here. We have equal to, we have not equal to, less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, less than, greater than, or a range. So you would state that whatever field you're looking for needs to be between these two in a range. List equals a value in a list, and you would type in a list, and if it matched something in that list you typed in, then that particular account would be on the report. Or does not equal a value in the list. Contains the pattern of, for like, or not like, does not contain the pattern of. We're actually going to say today that we want to look for everybody that has the name Mary as part of their name. Maybe it's Mary, maybe it's Mary Lou, maybe it's Rosemary. We want to find all those people. So in our field name, we're going to say that we want to compare our first name, and we're going to say that it contains the pattern of. So in that case, like we talked about last week, we're going to use a percent sign, which tells the system that we're looking for a field that contains whatever criteria we type in here. So we're going to say, and again, this is a alpha field, so we need our quotes. So we're going to say that the first name contains the word or name, Mary. We'll use another percent sign at the end, meaning it could be Rosemary, something comes before Mary, or Mary Lou, something comes after Mary. And then we'll just go ahead and press enter here, and we'll preview that report. We can see now that we have everybody who has the word Mary in their name. And there's lots of different variations, but we got all those people in our report. Now we're going to say that we want to see everybody whose name contains Mary and they live in the state of Michigan. So we'll say that our and, we'll use that combination, and our state is equal to, and again, it's alpha, so we need our quotes. We'll press enter, we'll preview our report, and every person that we have here named Mary lives in the state of Michigan. Okay? So we've got all those people. And that's all the selection criteria we want. But let's tell the system that we want to sort this data somehow. So we'll go into choose how data should be sorted. And we have priority. So how do we want to sort this? Let's say that we want to sort it by first name. Okay, so that's our first priority. And do we want it in ascending order or descending? We'll choose ascending. So we'll go ahead and choose that first name and press enter. Bottom of the screen says press enter to confirm. We'll enter again. And now we'll preview our report. Our report is now, it's no longer in account-based order, but it's sorted by name. It's going to give just all the Marys first and then carry on to the next name and the next name. And then we have our Mary Ellens together, our Mary Janes, Mary Joes, and so forth. So we've told it we want to sort by first name. We also want to sort by city. So in our city, we're going to choose that as priority 2, and we want ascending. So we've got two different sort options here. It's, again, sorted by first name first. And then we have it also sorted by city within each of those first names. Okay, so those are our sort options. And you could actually go ahead and choose anything that you want to sort your report by. Those were in the wrong order, so we're going to look at it again. So it's going to bring all of our Marys, and the cities are going to be in alphabetical order. And when we get down to the next variation of the name Mary, then again, the cities will be in alphabetical order. So there's only one Mary Alice, but then we carry on to the Mary Anns, and those cities are in alphabetical order. So that's how you choose how your data should actually be sorted. And now let's say that we want to get some totals on our report. So we'll go over here to create totals, and subtotals. So basically what we're going to do is choose, let's say that we want to see how many there are. We want a count of how many people there are. So we'll choose a count base, and we'll say that we want a count. And you can actually put that in any one of the fields that you want to. Okay? So then we'll go ahead, and we really don't even have to press enter. We can preview the report from here. But if we go to the bottom of the screen, we're going to see that the system gave us a count. Okay? Because we had said that we wanted to see a count for the account base. Now, if instead you had chosen total for your account base, what that would do is add up all those account-based numbers and give you the total. So some of the different options you may have to play with to get the right one, but a count is truly a count, and a total is going to add up everything in that field. So we wouldn't want to do that. We would just want a count. And let's also say that we wanted a count by first name. Okay, and what we had said then was we just wanted a count. So there's not going to be any splits here. It's still just going to give us our count at the bottom. Okay, and it gave us a count for the number of accounts and the number of first names. So some of the different options that you have here, you've got you could ask for an average, and that would mostly be used in a field that contains members' balances on a specific account. Same with the minimum and the maximum. Those would be for balances. So you wouldn't want to use it in this situation because we don't have any balances. Okay, we'll just go ahead and say we want a count for account base. So that's going to then show how you create totals and subtotals. There's a different spot down here in create breaks where we would be able to say where we want breaks, and then it would give us a count for each one of those breaks, and we're going to get to that. Next, we're going to look at, for just a sec, the create special sorting rules. And this isn't something that you would ever change. The bottom of the screen is going to tell us here that for most CU-based custom reports, the default hexadecimal sequence should work fine. And if you ever get to a point where you're creating a lot of custom fields and you're using lots of different calculations, at some point you may have to end up changing this. But for the most part, you're just going to pretty much ignore this option. So then we have our create breaks. Should the data be grouped together any specific way? It's a little similar to the sorting, but the breaks then would actually create a space between the fields that you choose. So we're going to say that we want, and the bottom of the screen also is going to display some information about this. This states to use the break level field to enter a sequential number showing how breaks should appear. For example, if you want records by branch number, then by account number within each branch, you would use break level 1 for the branch and break level 2 for the account type. But we're going to take a look at sorting or breaking by first name. So we'll choose break level 1 there, and we press enter. And then we actually have to press enter again to get the screen to open up to give us both of our options, which are skip to a new page, meaning do you want each name to appear on its own separate page. We don't want that, so we're not going to check that box. And then do we want to suppress the summaries in each break? And we'll say that this time we do not want to suppress the summaries. So we're just going to go ahead and press enter. And then when we review our report, we go down to where the names go from one name to another, and we're going to have a space in between there. And we had chosen not to suppress the summary, so we're also going to have a count. So we have 209 people named Mary, and then we have one named Mary Alice, and so forth. Okay, so each different variation of the name then is broken down, and it gives us a count. If we go back into those breaks, and let's say, again, we want to choose first name, and we're going to suppress the summaries, and then review our report, we are going to have just a break between each name, and we're not going to have any summaries. So it's just going to break for us. Okay. Let's say that you wanted to be able to read your report a little bit easier, and you just wanted a break in between each account base. You want to double space your report. It's just going to put a space in between each account base. So that option we just looked at then is telling us, or we're telling the system how we want breaks to appear on our report. And we're actually going to go into that a little bit more during our October class when we're learning how to string queries together, because the breaks come into play more at that point. So now we'll look at our formatting our columns. So then this screen is going to be just used to enter headings and spacing for the columns that on the final report. It's used to also control the format of the numeric data that's going to appear on the report. For example, you can control how dates appear, how dollar amounts are displayed, or percentages, how they're displayed. One other common use for this is to remove the comma from the non-currency field. So if you remember when we looked at it, when we look at most query reports, the account base actually has a comma in there, and so does the zip code field. So we're going to take a look at fixing both of those. First, we're going to go back in and take out our break here, because we don't need the report to be displaying so long. Oops. But before we actually change something, we'll just take a look here. We've got the first column is labeled field name, and that's going to say, if you preview your report, this says account base right here. So that's the field name for the account base. If we wanted this to say account number instead, we can just change that column heading. And then preview our report, and now this says account number. So you can make changes to any of your headings here. The length, it's not recommended that you change it. You can if you need to, but we recommend just leaving it as it is. The decimal column, that's the total number of decimal digits, if any, that are going to be in that field, and that's going to be determined by this field specification. And again, it's generally recommended that you don't do anything to this. Okay. Once you've made a change to one of these, there's going to be an asterisk displaying right under formatted, and we'll see how that looks here in just a sec. But we're going to go ahead and change the account base, because we want to get rid of those commas that are in there. Once you choose to change something, you're going to have some different options. Numeric editing, date or time, code, or word. Now down here at the bottom of the screen, it's going to give a little explanation. So numeric, you'd use that option for fields which contain quantities or dollar amounts, and so on, date and time for fields that have dates or times. So this is a numeric field, our account-based field, so we're going to leave it at numeric editing. I'm just going to press enter. And the first thing that it's asking here, or shows, is the decimal point. Now there isn't one in the account base, so we would just leave this field alone. And however, if from this field it wasn't a dollar field or an amount field, and the amount was $123.50, 123.50. If you were to choose none, then that column on your report would show up as 12350 with no decimal point. So the thousand separator, which is what our account number happens to be, is set as a comma. We're going to choose none. Now, if we go back in to display our report, we can see that those commas have been removed from that account number. Okay. Some of the other options that we have on this screen are, do we want the system to show a negative sign? If we want it to show on the left of the field, we would put our negative sign in that left negative sign option. If we want it to show on the right, we would put it down here on the right negative option. And the same with the currency symbol. And for US dollars, it's always going to be here on the left currency symbol, so you'll pretty much be leaving that field alone. And then the zero handling down here, print zero value. You could put a check in that checkbox to print a 0 when the value of the field is 0. If you want a 0 value field to appear as a blank, you would just uncheck that box. And then this one, replace leading zeros. If you wanted to replace any of your leading zeros with blanks, let's say, you can check that box and then choose what to replace it with. You may want to be a little bit careful here because say you have an account that has a suffix 001. If you were to replace leading zeros with blanks, that suffix then would just display as 1. So you probably wouldn't want that. So the other thing that we want to take a look at here, we've fixed our, whoops, I didn't save that. Let me get that. Okay, so we've fixed the comma in the account-based field. Next, we want to go ahead and fix our zip code, because our zip code should be a 5-4-digit field. And we can see that we've got our asterisk here now because we changed that account-based field. But we're going to go ahead and scroll down to our zip code field. And we're going to say that we want to change the formatting for that. Now, it really is a numeric field, but in this case, and the bottom of the screen on the key down here tells us, we would use the word editing to add characters such as dashes or parentheses to the data in the field. But first we want to do the numeric editing, and we're going to take out the commas that are in there. We'll save that, and then if we preview, our commas are gone, but we also want to add dashes. So we're going to change that zip code field again, and this time we're going to change it to edit word because the bottom tells us that's what we need to do to add dashes. So the field, the zip code, the system is saying, okay, it's right here between these parentheses. What do you want to do? So we'll put our cursor in that very first field there. And we want to do 5 digits, and then a dash, and then 4 digits. So we're going to arrow over 5 times. We're going to put a dash, and then we'll just press enter to save that. Now if we were to preview our report, we have our 5+4 zip code. Okay. So that's how you can change some of the formatting that is going to display on your report. Any questions so far? I haven't seen any questions show up in the chat box. So at any time if you have one, just go ahead and ask, and then we'll just at the end also open it up for discussion. So the next thing we want to talk about then is our outputs. When we're creating a report, what do we want the final result to be? Do we want to have it on paper? Do we just want to see it on our screen? Or do we want to go ahead and send it to a database file that we can download? So if we go into Choose Output, if we say that we just want this report sent to a display, there isn't really anything else that you have to do. That just means it's going to display on your screen. However, if you had many, many fields in this report and there were too many fields to fit on your screen, you would be able to tell the system that you want to use line wrapping. And if you did use line wrapping, then you would have to say what the wrapping width should be. A wrapping, to avoid having to scroll left and right repeatedly, usually a wrapping width of 70 works well. But if you just want to display it on your screen and you don't mind using the back and forth options, you wouldn't have to use line wrapping. So basically, if you're displaying it on your screen, if there are many, many, many fields up here across the top, you can use your move right arrow to move through the report. Or you can choose line wrapping to have it wrap so you don't have to use this move left and move right options. So we'll go back into choosing our output. And if we decide that we want to actually send this to a printer, we would just choose printer. And then the report, should it include detail or summary only? Most of the time you're going to want detail, but you can choose summary only if you want to, which would just be totals. And again, use line wrapping if necessary. So once you press enter on that page, then the system is going to ask you which printer you want it to go to. If you just leave this at this default of star print, then you would be able to find the report in your list of spooled files, and from there then you can send it to a printer. Or if you want it to go directly to your printer, you would just type in the name of your printer there. Okay. And then you can define the length and the width of your report if you want to. You can just leave it blank to use the default size from the printer configuration. And unless you know that sort of information really well, you'll probably just want to leave it as it is, so it'll use the printer defaults. You can define a start line, the line number on the page that you want your report to start at. You can define an end line. Basically, these are setting margins, whether you want to drop it down to start on the paper or stop it on the paper before it gets to the end. And then we have line spacing, and you're going to use that field to choose just the line spacing between each record on the report. You would use 1 for the standard single spacing. You would use 2 to allow a blank line between each record, or 3 to leave 2 blank lines between each record. If your report is set up for line wrapping, you would just want to make sure that you choose double space, because that'll make it easier to read. Okay. And then you can also choose, you can check this box for print definition. So in addition to the report going to the printer, you can say that you want all of your selection criteria and all of your choices that you made for this report to print out also. And if you need to document the parameters that you use to produce the report, it's a good idea to go ahead and just click that box to have that print out also. And then we'll press enter, and that's going to take us to a second page. It's asking if we want to send the report to a spool file. And you can say yes to send the printed report to your spool file before it's sent to the printer. And if you just leave it blank, the printer configuration will determine how the print file is handled. For any CU-based reports, you really don't ever want to say no to that option. So it's either going to be NA or yes. So if you do want to hold the report in the spool file before the system sends it to the printer, so maybe you can go in and view it, then you can say yes to this, go view it first from your hold file, and then print it from there. The form type, that's no longer used by CU-base. The copies, how many copies do you want of this particular report? And then hold, you would just choose yes here if you want to, if you want the print file to wait in your spool file until it's released by you. Now, in order to use this option, the send report to spool file would have to be yes. On the next page then, we can define whether we want to print a cover page, and we can define what our cover page title should be. And if you do choose to print a cover page, what that means is what's going to print on that cover page is the cover page title that you gave it, plus the date and the time the report was printed, the report name and the library it's located in, and the names of the files that you used for this report. Okay? So the cover page title, maybe you even want to put your name on it so that you know the report would belong to you. The next page is going to ask us if we want to print the standard page headings, which are the date and time and the page number, and whether or not we want a page heading on each page or a footer on each page. So if you go ahead and use the print standard page headings, it's going to print at the top right of every page on the printed report. And then you would just fill in your heading and footer if you want them. If you choose to uncheck this box to not print the standard page headings and the date and time at the top right, you can actually, you can uncheck that. Then you could go, you could define, if you want to omit the standard, you can define where you want those options to appear on your report. So if you uncheck that box, sorry, one sec. you would type, say that you wanted the date to appear not in the top right, but you want it to appear somewhere else. You would type in the and sign and then date to insert the date on which the report was printed. And then you would just tell the system where you want those to print. If you choose to send your report to a database file, we'll go ahead and choose database file. On the next screen then, it's going to ask us the name of the database file that we want to send it to. So let's call this database file Mary, okay? And then it's going to ask you the location that you want to send it to. So you'd put in the name of the library where it should be stored. But for all custom reports like we're creating here, you would just want to use the query XX, which would be your credit union's 2-digit code. Okay. And the data set, that's not actually used in CUBase anymore. And then the data in file, what do we want to do? Is this going to be a brand new file, or are we going to replace an existing file? So new file, you'd use that if you're creating a brand new file using a file name that you've never used before. Replace a file, you'd use that if you're creating a file and you want to name it the same name that another file out there already has. Or the other time that you would be using replace file, if you're creating this report and you want to run this report, say on a monthly basis, it's going to be a report that you use all the time, you would always want to choose replace file so that each time you run it, it would get rid of that old file and it would create the new file. The authority field is just you telling the system who has authority to go in and make changes to this. We recommend that you leave it at the default, and that's going to actually allow others at your credit union as well as CU Northwest CSRs to be able to use that report, copy it, or delete the report. Okay. And at this point, any of the other options are not really recommended. And then you can also choose if you want any text in that file to identify that file. And you can choose if you want to print the definition, meaning display all of the selection criteria that you chose for this report. Okay, and then that just sends it to your database file. And at that point, you would be able to go in and download it if you wished, or whatever it is you wanted to do with that file. Okay. We have one last thing here, which is choose other special features. And this has to do more if you've created reports where you use a lot of different calculations in it, what you want to do to the fields in there. So this is something that you're not going to be using on a normal day-to-day basis, but if you ever think you feel the need, you can just go ahead and give us a call and we can help you through that. So creating a custom report, we went ahead and took a look at our master file today. But some of the other options, and before you create a report, you would probably want to take a look at the files and just make sure which file you want to create a report for. We're going to back out of here to go look at the files, but when you are backing out of a report, say you're all done with it, you're going to get the screen that asks you if you want to save the definition and whether you want to run the report, run it in batch, or maybe you don't want to run it at this point, you just want to save it. You're going to just, at this point, name it. We have to have it a name. We didn't name it in the very beginning, so we're going to name it now. And then we're just going to press our forward arrow key to save it. Now, if you were in Report Builder and you're playing around and you've created a report and you really don't want that report, you just want to back out of it completely, when you get to this screen, you would actually uncheck the box to click Save Definition, and then you would hit your forward arrow, and that's going to get you out. You can't really ever back up out of a query. It kind of goes into a loop and doesn't let you out, so you have to hit your forward arrow. But if you uncheck the box Save Definition, you're able to get out of the query. So some of our other options then are Member 1, which is our share and IRA accounts, or Member 2, checking and draft accounts or certificates and loans. We'll just say that we want to look at a loan whose disbursement limit is greater than $10,000. So when we go in to build our custom query, we already know that we want to use our Member 5 file. So we're going to go ahead and create a report, and our file, where's the data coming from, we want Member 5. Okay, and we're not going to tie any other files to it at this point. We'll do that next week, so we'll just press Enter to confirm. And what fields do we want? Let's say that we want our account base and our account type and the current balance. And then what records do we want? We will scroll down until we find our disbursement limit. If you play with Report Builder quite a bit, you kind of get to know the field names and where they're located in the list, but sometimes in the beginning it might be a little difficult to find them. If you go into Report Builder and the screen looks like this, which it just has the field names and no explanation, you can toggle back and forth between displaying the text or not. So we want anybody whose disbursement limit is greater than 10,000. And we're not going to use commas, but we will use a decimal. And then our report will then give us that information. Okay. So for creating custom reports using a single file, you're just going to go ahead and choose the file it's coming from, what fields you want to display, what records, or what's your selection criteria, that sort of thing. So does anybody have any questions? At this point? So I'm not seeing anything come through in the chat. This meeting last week, it was being recorded, but it was being recorded in the wrong format, so it didn't go out on the website. This week, the session has been recorded, and it is going to go out on our website. So it should be out there by later this afternoon. Okay. So if everybody would like to go ahead again and send me an email with a report that you might want to create next week using one or more files, we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. Okay.